Hello and welcome to episode 3 of the BombCast. I'm Alicia, your host, and today we are talking with Dionne Mischler. Now, Dionne Mischler's background is in inside sales leadership. She grows inside sales teams as well as she's a keynote speaker. So welcome, Dionne. Thank you for coming on today.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. I would love to hear just a little bit about your background and how you got into what you're doing now with helping sales teams grow.
Sure, absolutely. So I am fortunate enough to live in Southern California now. However, I am a Midwesterner through and through. I grew up in the Chicago suburbs and spent, the first 20 years of my career in sales and technology, and going on 5 years now. About 5 years ago, I started Inside Sales by Design to work with organizations on their inside sales efforts. So probably about 11 years ago, I started my very first inside sales team. I worked for a Microsoft partner here locally in Southern California. And, inside sales is kind of one of those 30-year overnight in the making sensations. And through that experience, I found an organization called the AAISP, American Association of Inside Sales Professionals. And just through this journey, love inside sales, love the tone and tenor of it, love what we're able to achieve with it, the career path it gives people. It's an overall really great place to be. And when I started Inside Sales by Design, I really wanted to be able to bring so many of the best practices to more people and more companies and all that good stuff. So that's kind of the journey in a nutshell.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. I love what you just said about how it's a path for so many people, because I came from inside sales. It was, yes, it was my time in inside sales that not only, I'm not trying to be, overly, can't even think of the word I'm thinking of, but it totally changed my life. My experience in inside sales not only gave me confidence and taught me the whole way to sell. I was a massage therapist for 13 years. So when I started selling, it opened up a whole new world for me, which put me on this trajectory. So for a lot of people, it is a huge gateway into their next thing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The skill set that we give people with this just is exactly what you just said. There's so much confidence that comes with it because, when we're communicating over the phone or web or whatever, we have to really be present. And and especially if you're just on the phone, you have to be in it, right? When you're in person, you can your mind might wander a little bit. You have a little bit more leeway.
Yeah.
But inside sales, if organizations and the person, and there's a few factors that have to come together, but man, it can be an absolute tipping point for folks. Definitely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So do you think that the digital landscape has changed the way that we even do inside sales? And how do you think it's shifted the way that we do sales now than maybe 10 or 15 years ago?
Yeah. And so by digital landscape, do you mean the tools we have available?
Tools we have at our disposal, being able to, Google someone and look up tons of things about them, or even, being able to do inside sales calls over video.
Yeah, it's crazy. So here's fundamentally, and I am an amateur historian. I love history. I think there's so much to learn from it, right? And here's the thing: everything that's old is new again, and everything that's new is old, and old is new, right? Vice versa. So I think a couple of things. One, coming up and through the tech industry, right? I think every industry kind of has its bubble and everybody is unique in their own way.
Sure.
I think sometimes the tech industry can be very xenophobic to some extent, where we get a little myopic and think that, the whole world is doing it like this, right? And so I think we need to be very careful with that. So I've got some colleagues and I've got some clients that are in the manufacturing distribution world, or even some smaller companies, or not even small, but you've got companies that are outside this threshold that some of us eat, sleep, and breathe in. And so I think we need to be very careful. I don't know what those numbers are, but I think at the end of the day, there's still a healthy mix of dirt road out there.
Yes.
Right. And so I think we need to caution ourselves with some of that. Now, the second piece of that is absolutely the tech landscape and the tools at our disposal have absolutely been a game changer. So they need to be used appropriately, right? So there's a meme out there with a bunch of ladders laying down on the ground, right? With this poor person trying to get over the wall, right? And it's one of those things that says, even if you've got all the resources in the world, if they're not used appropriately, you still can't achieve your goal. So the short answer is yes, we have all these amazing tools now. We can definitely we can have velocity within our organizations and give our people a lift. There's a fair amount of training and process and lines on the road that need to be built before that happens.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you're working with inside sales teams, what is one of the things that you see being the biggest roadblock to their success and their growth? I know that's a broad spectrum question. I know there's probably lots of things you see, but what's the most common mistake that you see inside sales teams making?
Yes. So yes, there's a very, very large answer for all of that. I will do my best to condense it down. So in almost every instance, the biggest barrier and roadblock will definitely come from leadership. So whether it's an inside sales VP, or even if the inside sales team has an internal executive stakeholder, the biggest barrier is folks get dollar signs for eyeballs pretty quickly. And so maybe the stakeholder or champion of this inside sales effort read something or had a discussion with a colleague, and they're hearing the happily ever after. Right? It's kind of like if you watch something on HGTV and, oh yeah, you can remodel this entire house in 30
I can do that.
Great. Well, it was 7 weeks and a team of 100 people working 8 hours a day, So I think the caution is to make something look good, perform well, show up great, takes work, and it takes time.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I feel like one of the things that I would love to hear your thoughts on is transactional versus connection. Now, maybe connection isn't the right word when you're talking about sales. Maybe that's more, about the way we approach people. But where is that balance between being honest in the sales process and being human, and not just focusing on being transactional and closing the deal, versus also you have a job to do and your job is to sell that product and to close the deal. So how do you find the balance between that?
Sure. Yeah. And it's a good point. I was just chatting with some business development reps with a client this week. And I think for me, all of these questions and all of these pieces start with mindset, and they start with a definition and clear expectations. I absolutely think there is no room for ambiguity in some of these pieces. Ambiguity and agility are two different things. So we have to, again, be very, very cautious with some of our definitions and our expectations and what those bring at the end of the day. So when we are working with our transactional customers, when we're trying to make a connection, there's also a difference between rapport building and being someone's friend.
Yeah.
So we need to be very clear on that. And when we're talking with our teams, when we are having them go through onboarding, when we are working with them on their skill development, we need to be very clear on, here's how you need to show up and what that means. Here's what rapport is. This isn't sitting there shooting the breeze about a football game. It can be, right? But rapport is really about getting to a point where somebody feels comfortable talking with you. So that's really the art of conversation.
Yeah.
And whether I have a transactional customer or a multi-million-dollar customer, I still need to have a conversation. What that conversation looks like may end up being a conversation tree. But, for example, it's a B2C or a consumer scenario, but I had placed an online order and I think I entered my credit card wrong. I got an email. I called them back and it was smooth as silk. And I was like, hot damn. Like it was the best experience I have had to date. And the lady goes, okay, well, let me see. That went through. Yep, you're good. And you know what? What I'm seeing here is based on what you have here, you might want to try this. I can go ahead and make that order for you right now. Super easy. Oh, wow. Thank you so much for making it easy for me. Yeah. And so, but it was literally a 3-minute phone call. But in the back of my head, I'm like, no, I need to go to the store to try that on, but I'm going to do that this weekend.
Okay.
So when we think about our connection and our transaction and what that looks like, we need to be very clear on that. We need to be clear on our expectations. We need to be clear on our talk tracks and the words we're using.
Okay. Yeah. Do you, when you're coaching inside sales teams and teaching them, do you generally, have a pretty set talk track that you would, obviously every company is different, their product is different, their sales process is different, but do you lean towards having a set talk track as opposed to letting the inside sales reps kind of roll and improv?
Yeah. Yes and no. So I get asked a lot too, as far as Dionne, should we script our sales team and all, should we have a script? And my response is at first, absolutely. And then as folks get comfortable, as we know that they are comfortable, it's resonating with our customer and prospects, the experience is good, then yeah, you know what, there's some wiggle room there. And the reason I give folks is if you've ever sat down and watched, the behind the scenes on a movie, the very first thing the cast and crew and director do when they get a script is they literally sit down all together and they read the script word for word.
Yeah.
And these are folks that are trained to use their words. These are folks that have taken vocal lessons and inflection and all this other stuff. So we're deluding ourselves if we think that for those of us that we talk pretty good, I'm a sales professional. If we don't think we need to sit down and think about our words and script it out and try and have a talk track. So, in the movies, it's not until take 10 when they're, blowing things up and filming that the actors get to improv. So I think we owe it to ourselves as sales professionals to sit down, come up with our talk tracks, try them, test them, and iterate on them as a professional.
Yeah.
Right. And for every company, there should be a word bank that everybody needs to pick from. How those words get used, the tone, the inflection, that's the art of conversation. And everybody has their own style. The words need to be pretty similar.
Yeah, that's great. I love your analogy of movies and script. I am an actor. I've been like a paid actor since I was 12 or 13. So that analogy makes sense to me right away. It clicks. And when you are an actor and you are given a script, you are very cognizant of the fact that this isn't your story. You are a medium for the story. And I think it's the same way with a company that, every company has a story, which is why the words matter. And it's not the inside sales rep's job to tell a different story or to make up their own story. It's their job to bring the pieces together and help tell that story. So that's a really great analogy. I wanted to just touch on, you are passionate about women and mothers in the workforce. I have 3 children. I'm a single mom. So
yeah,
it's a tremendous amount of pivoting to try and figure out, make sure that I'm giving my job the time that it's supposed to have, and make sure that I'm giving my kids the time that they're supposed to have, and also trying to fit in time for things that I love, like being on set.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you are obviously very passionate about that, because on your website, it's right there. Dionne, is available to speak about, women in the competitive workforce and motherhood and all of that. So I'd love to just kind of hear some of your thoughts on that. Obviously, we know as women that it's a different experience for us. It just is. It's not good, bad. It's just different.
It's different. Absolutely. And I think what you said was really important, Alicia, that we need to stop comparing. I'm not male. I have never been male. I will never be male. Yeah. Right. And so as a mom, and I've got 2 kids and I'm a single mom too. And, we're all hustling. We're all doing the same thing. I think it's important that we recognize that everybody wakes up wanting to have a good day. Mm-hmm. Everybody, even our kids. Yep. Right. So nobody wakes up and goes, man, I really hope today sucks and throws me some curveballs. Right. So it just is what it is. And so I think as women, and in general, right. But for the purposes of this topic is, we need to kind of own our calendar. We need to not come from a place of fear. We do need to come from a place of confidence, knowing that I may say and do the exact same thing as my male counterpart, and it will be received potentially differently.
Yep.
You just have to know.
Yeah.
Right? Oh, you're being drama. No, I'm not. My child is sick and I have to go. You know what I mean? And that's a really egregious example. But I think, again, we have to manage and set our own expectations, mm-hmm. Number one. And number two, I mean, we have to kind of lead by example. I was working for an individual and, unfortunately, through his own circumstances, he was, or through a set of circumstances, he was dating again, and the person that he was dating again was a professional working woman, and his previous relationship, she was a stay-at-home mom. And that changed entirely how he viewed me.
Yeah.
Entirely.
And it's unfortunate that it takes that. However, at the same time, it's not necessarily their fault.
No.
It's if you've never managed, and it's not just single moms, single dads have some of the same challenges. Moms that are married and still have a supportive partner, it's still, there's a different weight that we carry, when the school calls and says that your kid is sick. It doesn't matter whether you're married or whether you're single. Almost always that's the mom that gets the phone call.
Absolutely.
Because the kid wants the mom to show up and pick me up and hold me and, buy me ginger ale. That's what moms do. And Absolutely. If you've never managed a mom before, it's not an intentional, marginalization. It's just a disconnect because they don't know what that experience is like.
Absolutely. And I agree with you on that. I think, there's a part of it, I think we all just kind of need to take a breath and realize that nobody's doing anything on purpose. Mm. Right. And
yes.
Right. There are some cases where it is, but I think for the most part, people aren't trying to intentionally cause harm.
Yeah.
And the other piece of that pie is recognizing again and just not necessarily anticipating, but being aware, for folks that are married and together and stuff, where it's like, oh, okay, thanks for the call so much. My husband's going to be there to pick him up. And so what we're talking about is a level of communication that far exceeds our literally what we do on a daily basis, right? There's research out there as far as communication with couples and all this other stuff, and just in the workplace. And quite frankly, we're all terrible at it. And how do we communicate in such a way that we kind of have a preparedness plan for when these bumps come up, because they're going.
Yeah. I'd love to hear your thoughts on if you necessarily think that women sell differently than men, or if that's okay, or if they shouldn't. Or I would love to hear your thoughts on that, just because I feel like when I was on inside sales, I had to overcome the thing inside myself that was pushing me to sell exactly like, you know, the other guys that I was working with, because I am a less transactional person than they are. So just your thoughts on that.
That's really interesting. How did you do that? How did you kind of overcome some of that?
I mean, I feel like in my life, I've done a tremendous amount of work in believing in myself and recognizing my own value and falling in love with myself and my story. So I think that through my inside sales journey was bringing some of those same pieces that I had to work on in myself and recognize, like, this doesn't exist outside of that, right? You are still a unique human being that they've put in this role, and no one is telling you that you have to do that. That's your own expectation.
Yes.
Yourself.
Yes. I agree with you on that. And I think so many times there's this voice in our head where we're translating, right? We're constantly translating information that's coming at us. And to what you just said is, I think sometimes we need to stop and go, wait a minute, hang on a second. I just heard you say this. Is this what you mean? And so my daughter's 9 and my son is 7. And I'm like, all right, guys, it's time to go. And, you know, for all of us, we're like, okay, I got a few minutes. I'm going to get my purse together and backpacks and whatever. Well, he's already in the car. And I'm like, where's Gabe? And he's in the car. And I was like, oh, okay. So he's that literal person. So I do think men and women sell differently because we're all human. We're all different. We're all unique. You know, God made us that way for a reason. If we were all the same, it would be really boring. Yeah. It would be terrible. So I think, one, the more we welcome and respect each other's differences, the better off we're going to be. And I think to you, what you said was really important, that we embrace who we are and how we do things. It still means I need to learn the company story. It still means I tell that, right? I can't deviate from that. They're paying me but finding your own voice in that is really important. And, you know, don't try to be the person in the next seat next to you, because it's already taken. Yeah. So finding your own voice with all of that is really important. And men and women, we are different, right? So I was an athlete, but it doesn't mean I'm going to go out there and, you know, be an athlete like another female or male counterpart at the end of the day. So I think all of that is really important to be aware of. So, you know, good points.
Yeah. Well, no, I appreciate your thoughts on it. I popped my head over to our inside sales managers. Yeah. Before I jumped on, I was like, hey, I'm interviewing someone who works with growing inside sales teams. Do you have any questions for her? And so one of our managers, his question was, when you're looking for talented sales professionals that are going to align with your organization, like, where do you start? Yeah, we have a recruiter. We take applications, but when you're looking to really grow your sales team, where do you start? He was like, do you look on LinkedIn? Do you just, how does that process, work to really find people that are aligning with your organization and with the story that your company is trying to tell?
Yeah, it's a good one. And inside sales is growing tremendously, right? That won't be a surprise to anybody here on the call. And with the unemployment rate being what it is, we have to be very intentional when we are looking for folks and wanting to grow our team. So if you are looking to grow your team, here's what I would recommend is, number one, sit down and have a goal. How many people, by when, right? Kind of start with the quantitative pieces. Then you're going to want to move to, if you don't already have an ideal candidate profile, for sure. And take your hiring as seriously as you would any major life decision. So this is not something that should be taken lightly. There should be a lot of intentionality behind it. And there should be a give and take. So it's how many people, what are my goals? hopefully there's some data behind it as far as when I hire people, I onboard. This is kind of what I can expect to see from an output perspective. Definitely having your ideal candidate profile out there and very clear expectations. Walk the walk and talk the walk, making sure that people know this is inside sales and you are on the phone and you are going to do video messages or whatever the case may be, but have very clear expectations and don't be afraid to set the bar high. So I think a lot of times, and we've all done it in every aspect of our life, like, that's good enough. Right? You know what? That might work for like a t-shirt you're going to the beach in, but this is a revenue engine and probably we should have a little bit more oomph behind it. So we were at a car show and this car had a bumper sticker on it that said ban low performance drivers, not high performance cars. And that really struck me, where I think sometimes we're almost afraid to say, hey, we are a high performing team. We expect everybody to come in on time, do their work, and be successful. And we've got a roadmap, we've got training for you, we've got onboarding, we've got the support system in place that you can drive on that road and be successful. So I think that those pieces of intentionality, absolutely. And then once you have your own talk track in place and your own plan, start executing against it. And that should be the focus. So if you know you're going to hire, 5, 10, however many people between Q2 and Q3, all of that plan needs to be executed right now. And so just as an example, and that is the one thing that is top of mind. So in every conversation you're having, in every interaction you're having, in every post on LinkedIn, and every tweet, if you're on Instagram, whatever digital medium you're using, the more people within the organization you have kind of getting the word out, again, with the story in the background, the better off you're going to be.
Yeah, I love that. You've come back to that thought a couple times in a couple different areas about having, a clear story, a clear set of expectations. And I think that's good because sales, there's a lot of room for muddy water in sales.
Gosh, that is such a great, yeah. Go ahead.
No, just within an organization, you have people that have come from so many different sales environments.
Yeah.
They've probably been taught to sell in a different way. They may have come from a really competitive sales environment or a non-competitive sales environment. So I think that having that clear roadmap and set of expectations and story is a huge value add.
Absolutely. You want to have the defensible position at the end of the day that says, on this team, in this company, this is how we operate.
Yeah.
Right. I had the same conversation with my 7-year-old. It's like, it's time to get in the car. And he's like, well, Mom, I'm like, in this house, when Mommy asks you to do something, you do it. In this house, we get to where we need to be on time. And it's the same thing. And I think sometimes we think that's too much or that's too intense or whatever the case may be. But that's our culture. And if you don't have your culture defined, that is your culture.
Yeah.
And all we're injecting is ambiguity into the situation, and nobody does well with that.
No, of course not. Especially salespeople. Salespeople are notorious for taking ambiguity. I can't speak this morning. I'm sorry.
You're good. You're good.
They're notorious for as much wiggle room and creative solutions as you will give them.
Absolutely.
Which is a great question, because you want a good salesperson. It wants to hustle and wants to be creative and find another way or find a new way. But obviously the structure is important, especially to make sure that you don't have, people doing shady deals or promising things that they can't give. So how do you find that balance? How do you give your salespeople the room to be creative without too much creativity in their process?
Absolutely. So it comes down to the expectations again, and this is how we do things. And I was running a team here locally for a company, and a lot of times folks default to price. And I said, you may not use the word discount. It is now banned from the floor. Yeah. I don't want to hear it. And they were all just kind of like, wait, what? And I was like, so my fault as the leader. So we're not selling on price. We're going to have a business conversation, and that's what we're doing. And so when we think about, we absolutely want people on our team that can use their critical thinking. We're all adults, right? So we want people that can have this conversation, can think on their feet and all that good stuff. In order to do that, we need to give them the lines on the road that says, here are talk tracks, here are the expectations, this is what this looks like. If it comes down to budget and all that good stuff, great, let's talk about it. But we're not going to sit there and just lead with that and the discounting, right? I mean, money is money, and we all have an emotional attachment to it in some way, shape, fashion, or form, but we're not leading with that. We're not talking about that. So these are the lines on the road. These are the conversations we have. Here are some examples. Let's do role play. Let's do ride-alongs. Let's do all this other stuff to really dial in what that looks like, right? So when I worked for the Microsoft partner here, there was absolutely a flow and a culture with every single Microsoft employee I ever interacted with.
Wow.
You know what I mean? And so for those of you that have a Microsoft store and an Apple store by you, next time you go in, go into both and really try to notice the culture, because they're very different.
Yeah.
And if you're looking for it, they will hit you in the face.
The differences will stand out if you're looking.
Yeah. And neither one is good or bad, right? Yep. It's recognizing that, though. And so for your teams, when we're saying wiggle room and, where you go and stuff, if we haven't given them the lines on the road as a leadership team, as a company, then we failed, and we are inviting that rodeo-ness.
I like that. Rodeo is a good way to describe it. It really is.
Yeah, we are saying it's a goat rodeo. It's a free for all, right? Because you never told me. You never told me I couldn't do that.
Yes. Yeah. Well, yeah. You will hear that from salespeople for sure.
Yeah. Well, thank you for taking the initiative. However, right? And so it's just one of those things.
Yeah. Have you seen any sales teams using video? Specifically the simple human one-to-one video, not company marketing video. Have you seen that in any of the sales teams you're working with?
Yes, I have. And for the most part, it's been really well received. Yeah.
What do you think is the biggest win with using video in the sales process?
It's different. It catches people's attention. And if you personalize it and do it well, it can really evoke a response, which at the end of the day is what we're looking for.
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly. It's getting a response that is different than what they're giving everyone else.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think it's really important to keep that in mind, right? And I just did a video blog, and I think it'll get posted here in the next month or so. And we were talking about why words matter. And, we did, I did a short talk on no versus not yet. And I think a lot of times in our sales organizations, we do pipeline review and, really intent on that. But I think too, there's something to be said for the not yet folks. Right? Oh, the nurture? Yeah, the nurture. Fine. You know what I mean? Yes. Whatever you want to call it. But I think we need to be mindful of all of that, right? And we need to be mindful that we are, in every interaction we have as a salesperson for our company, as a company representative in this role, that we are looking to evoke a response. And don't lose sight of that at the end of the day.
And evoke a response one way or another. When I was doing sales, I would rather have someone tell me no.
Absolutely.
Than nothing, because at least you have the information you need to move on or try another way. But that is, it's getting a response from people is obviously important one way or another. Just tell me.
just tell me. And I think sometimes like, hey, do you want to buy what we have? So that would be great. And you know what I mean? And so we're coming from a place of, would you please like what I have? Right. Versus shoulders down. Hey, let's have a conversation. We have a solution that may or may not align. You let me know what you think. And if it matches, great. And if it doesn't, we're going to move on.
Yeah.
That's a very different conversation. It's a very different feel at the end of the day.
Very different conversation. Yeah. Well, it gives you the opportunity to rather than, be trying to convince someone, and when you're leading with price, it's much more of this transactional, or are they going to give me money, as opposed to if you lead with value and the value that your solution offers. It's either, does this work for you? Do you want this value or not? You don't? Okay, on to the next.
It's really simple, right? And there's a difference between simple and easy, but spot on.
I like that. Well, Dionne, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate hearing your thoughts on some of the ins and outs of the inside sales stuff. I know our audience is really going to appreciate your insight. So thank you.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. And I hope you have a good day and great weekend.